Okay, so a lot of you have been asking about what went down in New Orleans
Mhm.
on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly the kind of fresh start I think anybody was hoping for.
No, not at all.
We're talking about a terror attack right in the heart of the French Quarter during the Sugar Bowl celebrations.
Of all places.
Yeah, so it's heavy stuff. And we're going to try to piece together what happened using reports from ESPN and WDSU.
Yeah, I think, what really strikes me is just the backdrop of, pure celebration and joy.
Yeah.
You've got the French Quarter totally packed with tourists. Everybody's there for the Sugar Bowl, ringing in the new year.
Right.
And then suddenly this.
Everything changes.
Yeah, it's
It's surreal, right? I mean, it's like straight out of a nightmare.
it really is.
It was about 3:15 in the morning when a pickup truck just plowed right into a crowd on Bourbon Street.
It's awful.
Yeah, 10 people were killed and another 35 injured.
Police Commissioner Ann Kirkpatrick, she described the attacker as just hell-bent on causing as much carnage as possible, just trying to run over as many people as he could.
And he was eventually killed in a firefight with police.
Right.
But the image of that truck and just the intent,
It's chilling.
it's chilling.
Yeah.
The FBI has identified the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. citizen from Texas.
And here's where it gets really unsettling. Jabbar had an ISIS flag in the truck and was actually dressed in military gear.
Wow.
They also found weapons and what appears to be a potential IED in the vehicle.
So we're not talking about just some, random act of violence here.
No.
This was planned, politically motivated.
Just seems that way, yeah.
Do we know anything about this Jabbar guy? Was he on anyone's radar?
Well, that's what investigators are trying to figure out right now. They're looking into his background, any connections he might have had, and whether he was acting alone or as part of a larger network. They're also looking at the possibility of multiple suspects involved, especially since we know the truck was rented.
Uh-huh.
So there are a lot of questions surrounding, who else was involved in getting that vehicle and how far back this plan actually goes.
And there was also that fire in the St. Roch area, right? I remember reading about that.
That fire was at an Airbnb, and authorities have linked it to the attack.
Wow.
Yeah. And they had to evacuate dozens of people from that building.
It makes you wonder about, how much planning went into this.
Exactly.
Was the fire a diversion? Was it just meant to create more chaos and panic?
Yeah, it really adds another layer to this whole thing.
It does.
The FBI has officially confirmed that they're investigating this as an act of terrorism.
Yeah,
And I think that brings a whole other set of implications to the table, wouldn't you say?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just hard to wrap your head around something like this, happening, especially in a place like New Orleans.
Right.
It's a city known for its resilience, for, celebration. What does something like this do to a city's soul? To its people?
I think that's the insidious thing about terrorism, isn't it?
Yeah.
It aims to strike not just individuals, but at the heart of a community, right?
Yeah.
Wants to sow fear and disrupt that sense of normalcy and safety in the places we gather and, celebrate.
And it makes you think about all the people who were actually there that night.
Right.
The ones who witnessed it, the ones who lost loved ones.
Yeah.
How do they even begin to process something like that?
Yeah. You're in the middle of celebrating, ringing in the new year, and suddenly your world is shattered by violence.
Right.
Trauma, works in strange ways.
Yeah.
That juxtaposition of joy and terror, the sudden shift from celebration to survival.
Right.
It creates a kind of cognitive dissonance that can be incredibly difficult to reconcile.
Yeah. And I think it also makes you think about, all those people who were there, the ones who witnessed the attack, the ones who lost loved ones.
Yeah.
How do they even begin to pick up the pieces?
Well, there's no easy answer to that, but I think one thing we know about trauma is that it's better faced together.
Yeah.
Community support, shared grief, that sense of solidarity can be incredibly powerful tools for healing. And I think we saw that in the aftermath of this attack.
Absolutely.
People came together to help the injured, to offer support, to condemn the violence.
You saw the first responders, the stories of strangers helping strangers.
Right.
The city just rallying around the victims and their families.
Absolutely. And it's almost like an instinctive response to tragedy, that urge to come together and find strength in unity.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in these, darkest of moments, the human spirit can shine through, right?
Yeah.
Acts of kindness, compassion, and courage can still emerge in the face of fear and despair.
And maybe that's part of what makes New Orleans so special, right?
Yeah.
It's a city that's been through a lot. Hurricanes, floods, social unrest.
Yeah.
And it always seems to bounce back.
Resilience is kind of woven into the fabric of New Orleans, isn't it? It's a city that understands loss,
Yeah.
knows how to grieve,
Yeah.
but also how to celebrate life in the face of adversity.
And speaking of celebration, the Sugar Bowl was scheduled for that day. Can you imagine the weight of that decision
Yeah.
to play the game or postpone? I mean, it's just a game,
Yeah.
but it's also a symbol of normalcy, of, carrying on.
I think it was a complex decision, no doubt, and I think the Sugar Bowl committee made the right call by postponing it.
Right.
Yeah, it was just a recognition that the city needed time
To grieve, to heal.
to heal, to
Yeah.
come to terms with what happened.
It's like they're saying, we acknowledge the pain, we stand with the victims,
Right.
and we will not let this act define us.
Exactly. It's a powerful message.
Yeah.
And it speaks to something I think we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay.
The impact of this attack on the larger conversation about security,
Right.
about how we balance freedom and safety in a world where these kinds of threats exist.
Yeah, it's almost like a wake-up call, isn't it? A reminder that even in places we consider safe,
Right.
there are those who seek to do us harm.
Yeah.
Does this change how we approach large gatherings, how we think about security? I mean, do we let fear dictate our actions, or do we find a way to celebrate safely without sacrificing our freedom?
I think that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And there are no easy answers, right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, we want to feel safe. We want to feel protected.
Right.
We want to believe that our law enforcement agencies are doing everything they can to prevent these kinds of attacks. But on the other hand,
Yeah.
we don't want to live in a state of constant fear and surveillance.
Right.
We don't want to sacrifice the very freedoms that make our society worth protecting in the first place.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
How do we strike that balance between security and freedom, between, vigilance and enjoying life?
It's a conversation we need to have as a society.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the trade-offs, the risks, potential solutions. We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to participate in shaping the kind of world we want to live in.
Yeah, it feels like a tightrope walk, trying to find that balance,
It really is.
where we're being cautious but not letting fear, take over.
Right.
So do you think, practically speaking, will we see more security at events after this?
Oh, I think it's inevitable that security measures will be reviewed and probably enhanced.
Yeah.
I mean, we might see increased police presence at, public gatherings, more bag checks, maybe even surveillance technology being used.
Yeah, but isn't there a risk of taking things too far? Creating this society where we're always being watched?
Right, and that's the danger, having freedom of movement restricted in the name of safety.
Right.
Security measures should be proportionate to the threat, and they should be implemented in a way that respects our liberties.
So how do we even navigate this new reality then?
I think part of it comes down to being informed and engaged citizens.
Yeah.
We need to understand the risks, the solutions, and the trade-offs.
Right.
We need to have those open discussions and make our voices heard.
So it's not just about the government or law enforcement keeping us safe.
Right.
It's about taking responsibility for our own security, being aware, and reporting suspicious activity.
Exactly. And it's also about that sense of community.
Yeah.
Looking out for one another.
Yeah.
If you see something off, say something.
Right.
Trust your instincts.
Yeah. It's like that old saying, if you see something, say something.
Exactly.
It's simple, but it can make a difference.
Absolutely. We all play a role in keeping our communities safe.
Well, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I
Yeah.
keep coming back to New Orleans.
Yeah.
It's a city known for its resilience and celebration.
And that's the message I hope people take away from this.
Yeah.
That these acts can shake us, but they also reveal the strength of the human spirit,
Right.
our capacity for compassion, for unity, for resilience.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. We can let fear win, or we can stand together, support each other, and keep celebrating life.
And maybe through all of our efforts, we can make tragedies like this less frequent,
Yeah.
where peace and understanding win out.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
We started this deep dive trying to understand a horrific event.
You did.
But I think we also found something deeper.
Yeah.
That resilience of the human spirit and the power of community.
Absolutely.
And we encourage you to continue exploring these issues, to talk about them, and seek out those different perspectives as we all try to figure out this world where celebration and vulnerability exist side by side.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.